We are loud people. Perhaps not in volume, but at least in volume sometimes. That is, we might not be yelling all the time, but most of us are broadcasting almost all the time. Broadcasting statements, pictures, videos to any and all who darken the doorway of our social media accounts. I've discovered that talking too much is a personality defect, stemming from mental and spiritual imbalance. Perhaps then the exhortations we find in Proverbs regarding our speech are not just applicable to our literal mouths and words. Perhaps they are equally applicable to all the ways we broadcast ourselves. Take then what we find in Proverbs 21 verse 21. The one who guards his mouth and tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Or Proverbs 13 verse 3. The one who guards his mouth protects his life. The one who opens his lip invites his own ruin. We must control our tongue in order to live a godly life. Maybe you've heard about the three ministers who went fishing one day, all friends, who pastored different churches in the same town. And while they were fishing, they began confessing their sins to each other. The first pastor said, "Do you know what my big sin is? My big sin is drinking. I know it's wrong, but every Friday night I drive to a city where no one will recognize me, and I go to a saloon and I get drunk. I know I shouldn't, but I can't help it because it's my big sin." The second pastor said, "Well, fellas, to be honest with you, I've got a big sin too. My big sin is gambling. As a matter of fact, you know all the money I raised for that mission trip to India? I took it to Las Vegas and I lost it all. I'm so ashamed. My big sin is gambling." Finally, it was the third pastor's turn. He said, "Guys, I probably should have gone first because my big sin is gossiping. There is wisdom in keeping your mouth shut. Certainly not all the time, but also certainly more than most of us do. But doing so is much, much easier said than done. In a society of hot takes, in a world of instant opinion and reaction, and in a culture where the loudest voice seems to always win, the temptation is there to broadcast immediately and loudly. In thinking through the contrary voice of wisdom in Proverbs then, I see at least 3 spiritual reasons why it's a good idea to keep my mouth shut more often. If you've got a problem with your tongue, it's much more serious than you think. You have a heart problem. A person with a harsh tongue has an angry heart. A person with a negative tongue has a fearful heart. A person with an overactive tongue has an unsettled heart. A person with a boasting tongue has an insecure heart. A person with a filthy tongue has an impure heart. A person who is complaining or critical all the time has a bitter heart. Beloved, it's not all the time that we need to respond when people speak to us or when we are confronted with matters that literally appear as tests and probes into our very reserved secrets and moments. For instance, I see clearly from the book of Genesis that when the serpent began to converse with Eve in his attempt to deceive and to lure her into sin, the best option Eve should have considered was to be quiet on the answers the enemy was demanding. so that God will be seen in our daily walk as people who are different in this perverse and crooked generation.